Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cinemondo podcast. Just me. I finally saw a movie that I'd been wanting to see for a while. Mark and Kathy both recommended it to me, and I just hadn't seen it. I really like movies that feature the town that I live in. I live in Los Angeles, California, and I know there's a zillion movies that are made here, but a lot of times when films are made here, they try to hide the fact that it's made here. They try to pass it off as Detroit or something, and or they just try to not make it look like L.A., or Hollywood. They try to make it look like somewhere else, or they try to film somewhere that doesn't give you that feeling that you're watching another film made in Hollywood. But sometimes films and filmmakers and stories will exploit the fact that LA is such a bizarre, massive, diverse, strange, dark, beautiful city. I love this city. I love this town. I'm fascinated by it still. I've been here forever, and I'm still fascinated by the history and the beauty of it, and then also the dark corners, the strangeness, the shattered dreams aspect of it, the Sunset Boulevardiness of it. And I work in the entertainment industry, so I see some of those things up close and in a way that that a lot of people don't realize is actually true. I mean, when you watch Sunset Boulevard, some people think that is a really radical, kind of fantastic depiction of a crazy woman who lives in the past, in her entertainment industry, filmmaking past. But there are people like that out here. There are people who are delusional in that way, and people who come out here hoping to get discovered, hoping to make it. They have dreams. They have huge dreams. A lot of people come out here trying to get into the entertainment industry. It's really difficult to get a foot in the door. It's so difficult to get started. It's the hardest work I've ever done in my life, and I mean by far. And it's also the most. It can be the most rewarding, and it can also be the most degrading type of work to get into. But a lot of people come out here to get famous, and it doesn't always happen. And in fact, it hardly ever happens. The idea, it's like the lottery. The idea of coming out here to become famous is like playing one lottery ticket. It's like your odds are bad. And I know it sounds cynical and kind of depressing, but go for it if you feel it. If you feel you can do it, go for it. But also be aware that it is very difficult, and you must work very hard. I've known some people who've come out here and they don't make it right away, and they're like, I give up. I'm going back to Kansas, and I look at that and I'm like, wow, you didn't even try. It took me years to even get a little bit in the door, and then you get a little bit more in the door and a little bit more, and you really have to be persistent. You also have to work very hard, and you also have to have something to offer. You have to really knock people over with your work, and you have to be indispensable. You have to be the person that does that. Anyway, that's my impression of LA. And sometimes movies get that point across. Sometimes movies deliver that the tragedy of Los Angeles, the sad parts of it, the losers, the broken dreams, the people who are struggling but don't really have any talent. They don't really have the thing. They don't really have the spark or the charisma or the magic. And yet they still push. They push and they push. And there's a movie called Nightcrawler, which came out in 2014. It is a slightly older, almost 10-year-old movie. But Jake Gyllenhaal is in it. And he's great. He's really great. He can do so many different kinds of things. He plays a guy in this who is this street level loser in LA who just makes money any way he can because he doesn't really know how to do anything else. He's like breaking in, he's like bolt cuttering through a chain link fence and stealing copper wire and stealing stuff from train yards. And he gets busted by a security guard, and then he attacks the guy like out of desperation and ends up stealing the guy's watch. He beats him up and steals his watch. And I think he decides to beat this guy up when he notices he has a nice watch. And so he beats this poor guy up and steals his watch. And it's an interesting moment because it lets you know what kind of person he is. He's this lowlife guy, and yet he is the person the movie is about. And interestingly, about that scene, one thing I like about that scene and the idea of that scene is the fact that for the rest of the movie, Jake Gyllenhaal's character is wearing that watch. So it is a constant reminder of what kind of person he is and how it's not like this is a story about him growing or learning. He doesn't learn a lesson in this film. He keeps that watch on, you know. He doesn't, there's no scene where he takes the watch off and renounces his bad ways. He just gets worse in this movie. And what happens in the film is there are people out there, the paparazzi types, who follow. They're like the ambulance chasers, and they follow it with the cameras and they try to get footage because I'm not sure if this is still a thing, but they were called stringers, and they would go. I used to know some people who did that, and they would just hang out at night. They'd get a police radio and they would hear about some kind of incident, and they would zoom across town and try to get the footage of the accident or the incident or whatever was happening. Cop cars, police around, running around, fire station, fire trucks, paramedics, gurneys with bodies. They would try to get the footage, and then they would take that footage to the news stations, and the news stations would pay them. And the fact that they would pay them is what created this commodity. They kind of created these people. Because it turned that kind of footage into a resource. So anyway, Jake Gyllenhaal's character sees this happening, and he sees these guys in a nice van, and he sees this, like, are you making money doing this? It's like, wow. And he starts thinking, wow, this could be an opportunity for me. Because he likes to stay up all night, evidently. And he's already a good sneak around guy. He's good at robbery, and he's good at breaking and entering, and seems to have no fear. He seems to be sort of a sociopath. So the idea of him worming his way into these situations and becoming a stringer, he gets his camera, he gets a cheesy camera, and he tries to get the footage. He tries to develop relationships with people in the news stations and the studios. And what's interesting about his character, he's kind of reminded me of Rupert Pupkin in King of Comedy, Martin Scorsese's film, Robert De Niro. The type of character who just has this sort of fantasy vision of himself. And he evidently has watched a lot of YouTube videos. Jake Gyllenhaal's character has watched a lot of YouTube videos about how to market yourself and how to be a businessman, how to be an entrepreneur, and how to achieve and how to rise up the ladder of achievement. And so he's got all these kind of really sort of bad ideas about how to get ahead, how to push yourself into better areas of achievement and all that kind of stuff. But he's doing it in that kind of nasty way of exploiting people, exploiting situations. And there's a scene where he shows up at an accident before the police, and he literally drags a person's body around so that he can get a better shot. He's that level of horrible. And if you haven't seen this film, watch it and then watch this, because I'm gonna drop a couple of little spoilers, but I try not to spoil. But it's a great movie about this kind of person who just has no scruples. It's like he's got no ethics, no real compassion, and he's trying to exploit people. He's trying to blackmail people. He's trying to get somebody to give him something in exchange for something, and he's being very very abusive to the people that he's working with and the people that work for him. He's like taking advantage of everyone, and ultimately he becomes more and more successful. And it's a very interesting movie. But like I was saying at the beginning, it is a movie that has Los Angeles as another character in the film. If you live in LA, you're going to recognize everything. So many little places that that are so familiar to you if you drive around in LA, and places and areas that you may not have seen in a film before, but are so familiar to LA people. They're very LA scenes, locations, and areas and roads, and it's just fun to see that for me, because sometimes you drive at night through downtown or whatever, and you see these people. There's so many people everywhere. Everybody's doing something. Everybody's got somewhere to go. Do you ever get those thoughts? And it's interesting when the film can take you into somebody like that, some person that you are not this kind of person, and you never will be, but those kind of people are out there. They're out there in the city. And it's a fascinating film. It's very well made. The story is well told. It's beautifully shot. The nighttime stuff is really rich and full of color. Jake Gyllenhaal is great. He plays a character unlike any other character he's played that I've seen. Usually he's a very smart and powerful kind of person. In this one, he is a sociopath. You don't like him in this, and usually you like him in films. But in this one, you don't. And you don't want to be friends with this guy. You don't want to deal with this guy. He's one of those people that if you make eye contact with him, he's going to try to get something from you. If you start a relationship with him in any kind of business relationship or friend or whatever kind of relationship, he is going to tap you out. And that kind of character is very real. And it's that desperate kind of person that you see in the big cities, where they just can't make it any other way. They can't, they have really, I guess, nothing else to offer, but their energies go towards exploiting others and exploiting situations and trying to figure out ways to pull money out of something. And in that way, it is fascinating. It's a fascinating film. I really enjoyed it, and I'm surprised I hadn't seen it until recently. But that's a review of a film that I liked quite a bit. So thanks to Kathy and Mark for telling me to watch it. I finally watched it, and I'm going to sign off now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.